question is, which kind of organizations need HR consultants help? Let us think about it. There are three categories that I have found. These are highly, like the hot list for HR consultants. Manufacturing entities, definitely. Any company doing manufacturing, big opportunity for an HR consultant who develops the skills. There's a huge lack of information around factories act related work, all kinds of registers, compliances, what should the occupier do, what should the manager do, the state level rules, if you have factories in multiple states, how to do this, how to report to our head office that everything is happening properly. So all of this work is huge. What to do in case there is an accident, how to ensure, how to handle inspections. Factories commissioner is different from so all of this work has to be done. Then contract labor related aspects, how do you deal with different contract labor suppliers, violence with contract labor, any hooliganism, any non performance by contract labor. All of these are very important, and contract labor act has more than 25 or so forms that need to be filed. Okay, so how do you retain those, how do you file those, how do you comply? So just the compliance angle, having proper manageable systems for one workplace is very high. If you just add factories act plus contract labor, and if the organization has many offices, it's even bigger. Standing orders act has, basically, if you have a factory, you're doing manufacturing work, you're likely to have, and you have 50 people or more. In some states it's 100, in some states it's 50. Okay, then you will need pre-approved standing orders, under which, now what happens is, standing orders drafting is one time work, but implementing them all the time, especially when you have to take disciplinary action, is the key. Because these orders will say that you can suspend the person for this long, you can pay them subsistence wage, if the inquiry goes on for longer, then this is what is to be done. Okay, a lot of other things are written in the standing orders. Like, how many of you know code of conduct? Code of conduct is there in, maybe there in your organization for all the employees. Code of conduct equivalent, you can say, is standing orders which prescribes the terms of working and all the misconducts. Okay, all the misconducts that are listed in the standing orders go in the code of conduct of the company. Okay, so standing orders related work is technical, but HR managers can do it and nobody else can do it. Okay, everybody else struggles. Union recognition, which union to negotiate with, which union to recognize, when to enter into settlement agreements. Is it better to have a short agreement or a long agreement? Is it better to have an agreement just with one union, or should we do this before the commissioner and have it tripartite? All these questions are strategic. Okay, and there's a legal angle, and there is an opportunity for HR managers to actually specialize in these areas. See, because the union side, you have trade union representatives representing the workmen, but who is there from the organization side? There is a gap. Okay, the person working for the union can't work for the organization, because it's two different ways of thinking. So you have to see that how can you cater to this side. Then industrial disputes which go to court, if there's a strike, there's a lockout, or there is a reference to an industrial tribunal. Okay, then obviously lawyers take up the legal work before the courts, but there's a constant activity with HR, who is giving documents, who is creating the trail, who is reviewing the work. And this is there not at the time of industrial dispute alone, but from much before. The whole document trail must be maintained, keeping in mind that agar court mein jata hai, to how we will protect our company's interest. Okay, and industrial disputes may, then there can be a matter before the tribunal, there can be a matter before the labor court, or there could be a matter going to the high court also. So ye pura, you will have to understand that at which stages, where should it go, how to deal with this. Disciplinary proceedings we've already dealt with. Challenges usually are this, that keeping a record of document, writing various letters to employees when you are in pre-disciplinary proceeding letters, then creating the disciplinary body. Okay, the disciplinary authority, inquiry authority. Okay, then administering the whole proceedings, drafting various notices, conducting the inquiry, conducting the hearing, making the findings, imposing the punishment. Okay, all of this requires a lot of skill. Okay, so this part is very, very important to do properly. And this is what, so even if organizations have internal resources, they will consult an external consultant for second opinion always. General legal work is there. Okay. Then responses to various kinds of labor authorities will keep coming for any manufacturing entity under Factories Act, PF related laws, contract labor. You will keep happening this. Then startups is the second most important area that we are identifying because of various reasons. Okay, startups are scaling up very fast. Technology related startups especially are fast growth companies. They have their investors insist on full legal compliance and they want to do things right from the beginning. So they are not using the traditional approach where they say chalo dekh lenge, settle kar lenge, as long as we can do business it's not a problem, everything else can get settled. That kind of traditional approach is not being followed. These startups have this mindset that they'll grow in India and they may even want to grow global, and therefore violating law is not an option. So what is happening now that earlier if a company was willing to pay lesser for compliance, today that is not the case. Today they are paying more, and not just compliance but for many more things. Okay, so how do you actually help a startup? See, the way you help a manufacturing company is very different from the way you go about helping a startup. Documentation for interns. Startups will want that the interns who come in they have proper documentation, because they have a very big they involve interns extensively with management related work, serious stuff, and they'll want that proper documentation is there, especially for the intellectual property part. Okay, because they don't want the IP, all the business plans, secrets to be leaked out. Okay, so they want proper enforceable contracts for this. Secondly, they want a proper plan because interns also want jobs and startups want to find talent. So they'll want a proper plan by which such interns can get pre-placement offers and convert to employees. At the same time, they will want to then structure the employment contracts in a way that people don't stay there for 6 months and then leave for higher paying jobs. So they want the right kind of talent. So as you move across the value chain, you see interns, then you see acha probationary employees ko how do we deal with it? Okay, what kind of conditions do we keep on them? Then how do we structure the employment agreement? Now here, employment bonds and all have been really challenged a lot, very hard to enforce, and it becomes difficult to put terms which are completely unenforceable. So people want help with structuring loyalty related so there is a loyalty bonus which is there. That kind of structure can be there in the employment agreement. Then there are today's employment agreements are very different from a regular appointment letter under Shops and Establishment Act. So here you will have provisions on IP assignment. This means that all intellectual property of that the all the creativity, all the output, all the intellectual output of the employee on the work, that assigns or goes to the employer. The employer owns it. Non-solicit and non-compete clauses are there, that you will not take away clients of the employer or the vendors of the employer, or you will not discourage them to work with the employer. You'll continue that. Okay, you will not compete with the employer, you will not join a competitor. This part has to be properly drafted. If it is not there, it's risky. If it's too wide, then any employee will not follow it, and if you go to court to enforce it, they will say that this is unreasonable. So if you have a non-solicit also, for example, a competitor can hire you, but that has to be in a specific way. They have to release a general notification. Okay, and then if they hire, then it's fine. So this is important for your hiring strategy also. If your HR person is there in the recruitment angle, you're hiring somebody from a competitor, they may have a non-solicit clause, or they may have a non-solicit clause with your company. Okay, so you have to be very careful about how this is working out, how the non-solicit clause works. Code of conduct drafting is very important. There is no model code of conduct that you have across all organizations, simply because all places it will work differently. In like a financial institution, who has access to data, and when you are suppose working from home, then which kind of room you work in, whether other people can see your work, whether your family members can see what you're doing, that can become a misconduct. Okay, in a regular organization where you're just doing some regular coding and all, that may not be an issue. So what are the misconducts will differ from organization to organization depending on the sector, and also a lot of learning. over the period of time, like over 2 3 years, then organization also, its nature of work evolves, and they want to customize this. So you'll have to keep working on this, like completely freshly all the time, and you have to keep investing in training employees on this. So HR consultants can be involved in the drafting, the updation, the communication of updated code of conduct, and the training and the certification of it. So if you are into L&D, for example, a lot of HR people are into learning and development. There these parts become very important, that how you put the legal part into the L&D side, because the more trained your workforce is on these aspects, the more likelihood of compliance exists. Okay. Then whistleblowing is always necessary. Any violation, trust me, will know you, who will know if there's a problem. An angry employee will complain to the authorities. Okay. But if somebody in the organization is violating the policies, again another angry employee can tell you, or there could be somebody who's a senior. But how do you encourage people to report wrongdoing? For that, you need a whistleblower policy. It's like the whistleblower that is blowing the whistle, and you have to protect a whistleblower by keeping their record safe. You don't have to disclose their identity. You also have to have a proper, inquiry and ethics inquiry into any such whistleblowing activity. Okay. So two things are necessary: action against the wrongdoer and protecting the whistleblower. So these two have to work in combination, and you have to encourage this as well. Just as training people on code of conduct will help, training people on whistleblower policy will also help.